it's just disappointing to see that this show that gave us analysis and made you show your work. That's what it was. Around the Horn made you show your work. Like, reality gave out points for stats, information, journalism duties. I mean, it was the show that absolutely made you a smarter sports fan. And that's the thing that we're losing as a whole, is that people don't want to think anymore. That's why everybody calls everything a think piece, because people hate to think. They don't like to read. They don't like to study. They don't like to think. They don't like to analyze. They don't like to do anything that calls for anything beyond the surface. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new edition of the Chris 2 Cents podcast and on the Chris Stevens Write YouTube channel, where myself, a writer, Chris Stevens, is going to talk about his 2 cents with common sense. Of course, that 2 cents has everything to do with writing, journalism, self-help, physical fitness, things along that line. And today, I am mourning the impending loss of a show that pretty much shaped how I wanted to be a sports writer all those years ago. I started my sports writer journey at the Delaware State Hornet newspaper in 2002. And the same fall that I started this journey, a show started coming on ESPN around, well, I don't know if we'll call it I don't want to call it, lunchtime or traffic time, because I always made sure I got morning classes. I was not a midday class person. My class couldn't be had or done by 12 o'clock. I wasn't taking it, which is why it took me so long to graduate. But yeah, guess we'll say dinner time. And Around the Horn definitely played a part in my sports journalism journey. And of course, if you guys are not familiar, this week is the last week for Around the Horn. And those of us who prefer sports analysis with intelligence, with well-studied and well-rehearsed points, and just, this is a huge loss. It is a huge loss. It is so funny because everything about that show in the last couple of years kind of started to hit its stride. I mean, it was already a great show when you think about the legendary panelists that were on it. When you started off with Woody Page, Tim Cowlishaw, Bob Ryan, TJ Simers. Who else was on there? There was a few. I mean, Jay Adonde's been there from the beginning. Kevin Blackistone. And then you started seeing more faces and people, more of my generation, like Bomani Jones, Jamel Hill, and these younger ones coming up. Justin Tinsley, who I know from his days at the smoking section and on the what was the show called again? Doggone it. I can't remember. I know that. Unsportsmanlike Conduct with Eddie Masonette and Kim Masenda. Yeah, I used to listen to the UC show, and Justin Tinsley used to be on there all the time. David Dennis Jr., who, of course, also wrote for the smoking section, but, of course, has a great memoir out with his father, Making the Movement, that I highly recommend you check out. There are other people, there's Pablo Torre, who's hilarious. You got Harry Lyles Jr., who's destined to be a star in this business. Courtney Cronin, who's destined to be a star in this business. Jen Latta, Sarah Spain, Israel Gutierrez, who really stood out to me because I didn't know the man was gay until he announced he was gay. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point, that his who he prefers to lay down with doesn't have anything to do with who he is as a journalist, and he's a damn good journalist. So there was a lot to love about that show. And of course, you have reality. Tony used to get on my nerves, man, because I was, the scoring system, it was like, what the hell is he thinking? But then when he finally broke it down, like, there is no method to the madness. It's just madness. It's like, okay. So you just sort of roll with it. And Tony, by all accounts, is a wonderful human being. So this is a huge loss for those of us who prefer anything other than Stephen A. Smith barking at women about the WNBA, and Shannon Sharp, who probably won't be back on ESPN to his own stupidity, co-signing him. And any of the other foolishness with these podcasts, like, I'm not gonna put too much on all this smoke, because they still pretty much just have guests on and talk old stories. They don't really get into the nuances of the game, which is fine. Storytelling podcasts are cool. When Jim Cornette is in his territory bag on the Jim Cornette Experience, there's nothing better. It's when Jim Cornette tries to talk about modern wrestling. It's what trips him up in my opinion. All due respect to Jim Cornette, of course, one of the great managers ever. But I think Around the Horn was just a very special show from the standpoint of they built something there. They built a connection. They built a vibe. They built intelligent analysis. And we're losing that. And I love Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon. I do, because PTI came before Around the Horn. That's where Tony Reale got his start. He was Stat Boy. But Tony and Mike, with all due respect, they're getting older. They're getting more curmudgeonly. Today's sports just ain't for them. I mean, I cringe when they talk about the WNBA. I do. And I mean, again, I have the utmost respect for Mike Wilbon. He's one of the black sports writers I wanted to pattern my career after. Tony Kornheiser seems like a really good dude, but they have blind spots when it comes to the way sports are in the 21st century. Because you got to remember, Kornheiser started as a sports writer in the 70s, not even the mid 70s, the early 70s. Wilbon started at the Washington Post in 1980, the year before I was born. So they've been around a little bit. That's a combined total of 100 years of sports writing experience. That's why Tony always makes the joke about how he's turning 100 very soon. But I'm going to miss Around the Horn leading into PTI, because I know what I'm going to get from Tony and Mike. I'm going to get a lot of get off my lawn from them, which is fine. But you need something to balance that. You need a modern take on things that isn't cloaked in arrogance, that isn't bathed in lack of knowledge, that isn't wrapped in a frat boy red pill package. And that's basically what we're getting now that ESPN has drawn a line and saying, okay, we can give Pat McAfee a ton of money, but we can't save Around the Horn. We can give Stephen A. Smith a ton of money, but y'all don't need Around the Horn. And again, Stephen A. up to a point was somebody that I admired. Again, I tell the story all the time. I've told it on this channel. I saw this man at the Unity Convention in Washington, D.C. in 2004, and he gave me some great career advice about my path in journalism. Follow your heart, because anything else is just a job. I carry that with me to this day. But the way Stephen A. is just sort of kind of evolved into this caricature of himself, it's like, not a fan. I'm not a fan. And it's disappointing because we're losing great voices as a whole. Like, I'm going to miss Adonde on there. I'm going to miss Blackstone. I'm going to miss Calishaw, Woody and Bob being the old curmudgeons, the lovable old curmudgeons. But then again, when you think about the new voices that got on that show, Pablo Torre, Bo, when he was working with ESPN, had a great, run as an Around the Horn panelist. Harry Lyles Jr., like I said, he is destined to be a star in this business. He is one of the top college sports reporters in the nation. Courtney Cronin does a wonderful job with her radio show and covering the Chicago Bears for ESPN. Gonna miss her voice. Gonna miss, Justin Tinsley, who I've had the pleasure to listen to him on the Unsportsmanlike Conduct show, read his stuff in the smoking section, watch him be a writer for Anscape. Like, his rise has been phenomenal. I hope to get him on a HBCU Sports podcast one of these days, by the way. So it's just disappointing to see that this show that gave us analysis and made you show your work. That's what it was. Around the Horn made you show your work. Like, Reality gave out points for stats, information, journalism duties. I mean, it was the show that absolutely made you a smarter sports fan. And that's the thing that we're losing as a whole, is that people don't want to think anymore. That's why everybody calls everything a think piece, because people hate to think. They don't like to read. They don't like to study. They don't like to think. They don't like to analyze. They don't like to do anything that calls for anything beyond the surface. And Around the Horn was definitely a beyond the surface show. And that is it's disappointing. It's discouraging. For those of us who have been in this business as long as some of us have, 23 years for me, you're just watching the party die. Like Kendrick said, you're watching the party die. I mean, the party, you could argue the party died when Zuckerberg fooled everybody with that pivot to video bullshit. Like you could argue that the party was dead then. But just watching the corpse kind of meander around, like, weekend at Bernie's. It's very, very discouraging. It's very frustrating. It's hurtful. But there is a bright side to it, I feel like. When I look at what I'm doing with HBCU sports now, we have our own Around the Horn. We have our round table where we discuss the different HBCU sports topics of the day, and we do our own little off-topic things. I mean, so if anything else, Around the Horn has given a lot of journalists and sports writers a voice that they didn't know they had. And it inspired us to create our own voices, create platforms for our own voices, I should say. Again, I keep saying it's a huge loss because I just can't get over how a multi-billion-dollar, close to trillion-dollar corporation can say, all right, this show has been popular for 20 plus years and we're done with it. Because Around the Horn was good from the word go. Make no mistake about it. And there was just everything about, I mean, even the panelists that I couldn't stand, and those were far and few in between. Like I can honestly say I can't stand Frank Isola. Like that's a dude I would not want to be in a room with for 5 minutes. He and I just wouldn't vibe. I can tell, especially since he was disrespectful to a friend of mine on Twitter. So yeah, Frank Isola, not a fan. But most panelists on that show are people that you feel like you can kick it with in your daily life and talk sports and talk everything else. Oh my God, how did I forget Mina Kimes? Mina Kimes is just probably going to be, I don't know if she'll go on to be the most successful Around the Horn alumni, but she'll definitely be up there. Make no mistake about it. And I'm going to enjoy these last few episodes and then just wonder what's next, because there has to be a next. I mean, it might not be in Around the Horn form per se, but hopefully it's in a form where smart, intelligent, young journalists and writers and thinkers who have not just the knowledge, but the empathy and the care to discuss certain topics. It has to emerge. There has to be something out there. There has to be a next. Around the Horn can't be the last stop, or everything we knew about sports and sports journalism and sports media just continues to wither away. Because I can tell you, I've not watched Pat McAfee's show once, and I will not. I barely even watched Stephen A. Smith's YouTube show, and that was something I patterned this YouTube show after. I can't do it. I'm at a stage in my life where I require some intelligence with my sports analysis, some humor, yes, and just a intellectual curiosity. That was always the thing that people said that made Barack Obama different from everybody else that was president of the United States, was his intellectual curiosity. Around the Horn was a show that gave you a bunch of people with intellectual curiosity as far as sports goes. And hopefully, again, this is not the last that we see of any of these panelists. Hopefully it's not the last we see of Tony Reali. And hopefully it's not the last we see of a show of this kind. Because if it is, it's devastating for sports journalism. It's devastating for critical thinking. It's devastating for, I don't want to say the future of this country, because the future of this country is already on fire anyway. But just the way Around the Horn was able to mix that banter with humor, intelligence, empathy, compassion, intellectual curiosity, like, it was a one-of-a-kind show. And I'm going to miss it very, very much. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. And that's going to do it for this edition. That's my 2 cents for this episode. Greatly appreciate your time as always. Contact information will be in the description below. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this video. Like and comment on the videos, yes, and subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you're notified of all the new content that drops on this channel. Once again, I am transitioning this channel from a music channel, a culture channel, to just strictly writing, journalism, and any sort of societal issues that I feel like discussing. As far as my personal life, I may have some, it's not my personal life, but just like, personal topics like sensitive after dark type things and things that don't have anything to do with writing and all of that stuff. I may have something for you guys, so stay tuned. So thank y'all for watching and listening to this edition of Chris 2 Cents. Greatly appreciate your time as always. Till the next time we speak, y'all be good and be good at it. Oh yeah, it's Memorial Day weekend. Be sure to get something good on the grill.